The Forgotten Mermaid. All lost hearts may be redeemed. By Gregga J. Johnn. 11. Dr. Scrandon and Reverend Tungsten led Beryl inland to the great lake that lay in the island's central valley. When the gentlemen happened upon the excellent fishing spot the day before, they'd hoped it was the fresh water source they'd set out to find. There was a fresh waterfall pummeling down the volcanic mountain into the massive clear waters, but the lake itself still contained salt. The learned doctor suggested perhaps there was an outlet to the ocean beneath the waters somewhere. When they saw small spouts of water spray being tossed up into the air by some great creature that rippled large quantities of water at once, they stayed clear of the sands and wandered about the waters cautiously. Barrel's demeanour was diminished since losing his best mate Galley. He followed along behind the gentleman, his massive chest caved in. The Reverend was a little disturbed by the affected emotion the man had for his dead friend, but for gentility's sake he kept quiet. Dr. Scrandon was entirely focused upon finding an explanation for the disappearances and illusionary disturbances in which they seemed blindly to continue, for although upon a thorough physical examination with his fingers the doctor found a gaping hole in the dead galley's upper chest, yet still he could not see it with his eyes. He was entirely confounded, and it just would not do for the modern man of science to leave such alone. They explored their way around the lake with great ease in the delightful sunshine, were it not for the fact that they had lost 9 out of the 12 of their party members in the last week, had been violently shipwrecked, and could trust nothing about the appearance of their health. The day's stroll might have been peaceful and refreshing, yet as is in the case with all hearts, it matters little what surroundings we find ourselves in when our hearts are as dark as the grave. On the far shores of the clear lake there was an orchard with rows of trees heavy laden with a fruit unknown to men. The bright green skins seemed hard and unripe, yet the dark olive ones that appeared ripe on the outside held thick black insides that the men presumed to be rotten. Beryl cared not, though, and took a mouthful of the gooey, sticky blackness. The Reverend scolded him. "If you care so little about your health that you kill yourself on rotten foods, just be sure to bother us not with your moaning when it churns your stomach later." Beryl paused in his first bite, looked the doctor right in the eye, and spat out the fruits in disgust. The pious man sneered with his "I told you so" condemnation and walked on. Beryl then smirked secretly to himself and snagged as many of the round olive fruits about his person as he could carry. Then he happily sloped and snacked upon the delicious treats whenever the gentlemen were not looking. Such a refreshment came upon him that he began to hum along with his happy tummy. Reverend Scrandon pushed on through the orchard like a man possessed. He came out into the prairie flowers with a blind eye to the glory of the natural world about him, and pressed on again to another spring waterfall that burst out from beneath a rough, rocky platform. He scrambled up the natural outcrop and stood in the wind there, breathing deeply. Below him was a quiet pool that the falling spring waters cascaded into, caught within tall, rocky cliffs. The sea waves were kept out of this rock formation that was long and hollow as a corridor. It looked to have no break in its hallway of walls that plummeted some 50 feet to the waters. Yet these men were not interested in the odd giant bath. Rather, the men of study paused only briefly. There was too much to confuse and confound already. They continued past the spring, over the top of the short grassy edging, and peered down to the quiet sands of a separated private cove on the other side. There was no way up to or down to from the beach there except to climb the sheer rock itself, so the men continued. Behind them a forest walled them out, thick and tangled, and dubious sounds of wild animals echoed as they drew nearer. They considered the open a safer place, so they returned to the cliff edge that jutted out into the dangerous ring of rocks like a widow's walk. From the bare watching grounds there, Beryl saw it first. "Sails!" screamed the seaman. The gentlemen screwed their eyes against the sun and made out also the soft wind-filled sails that casually blew along the horizon. "Quickly!" yelled the doctor. "Back! Back to the beach. We must build a great fire to be seen." And the men all ran back the same way they'd come, around almost 3/4 of the island again, desperate to be saved off this hideous shell of a mysterious island. She paced her luminous platform. The soft blue glow of slimy cave walls and the plashing rhythm of water, sucking and slurping in time with the waves, brought gentle comfort to her terrified heart. She carelessly picked up an arm and almost took a bite, but the churning of her insides repelled such, and she tossed the arm back into her stockpile of fleshly feasts. Falling to her knees, she began heaving the contents of her stomach over the edge of her peaceful hold. Chunks of freshly devoured sailor floated upon her reflecting pool as she wiped her black lips, and shimmering tears sparkled the lavender glimmer of her cheeks. She fell into the waves like a ball, curling up and slowly sinking into the depths of her treasure hoard. There on the silent piles of golden coins she rocked herself, gripping her arms about her head, as tormented memories flashed insistently as jolts from the past. In her mind she tried to block the images of that white vessel that caught her in its harpoon-thrown nets and dragged her on board to her nightmare. Then her desperate show of strength revealed her legged form and condemned her to night after night of contained rape. In the moments when she refused to turn from her mermaid form to give access to the hordes of lust, she was caged at the prow of the vile ship and carried about without food or shelter in her beloved waters that sailed beneath her. She, their living carving of luck at their prow. The waves called to her and stretched their arms up to embrace her as she cried out for their strength, but lost hope, defeated her spirit, and they stole her pride time and time again. They starved her or savaged her body. They kept her the plaything of the entire crew until Calypso herself unleashed a mighty tirade against their sins. She saved every one of the sailors who tormented her. She swam them each to the shores of her new island that they not perish in the turbulent waves on the rock, and then she ate every single one of them alive. But a deeper memory flashed upon her devastated heart. The boy, his eyes of kindness, his gentle reaching to her even though he was dying. She had saved him, too, long ago, as a mergirl.